Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beginner Sim Yourself Clinic. I am sorry I am a couple minutes late. My computer thought that Wednesday at 8:58 was a great time to do an update with Windows, so that was fun. Um, just to introduce myself, I am Voith, a Beastmaster Hunter with Warfront in CTR Omen. I enjoy killing mythic raid bosses and taking long walks through mythic plus dungeons. Now, before we get started, I would like to go over the format for this evening. The content is broken down into chunks, and after each segment, I'll pause to check the Discord channel and the Twitch chat. So either one works. If you have any questions, put them in there at any time, but just realize I'm not going to check them until after I'm done blabbing on and on about what I want to talk about. So, and right after the question and answer, we'll jump right back into the next sim part. Now, if you are simming yourself later, after this is all done and things don't look right or it's just not working how you expected, please feel free to contact me. My information is right here on the side of the screen. I'm on Twitter at VoithValier, Discord, Voith #0451, email voithvalier@gmail.com, and in-game Valier #1530. I'm on Eastern Standard Time, but I'm usually on most evenings. I'm also going to post this clinic to YouTube, so at the very end there'll be a chance for you to give me your email and I can send you a link if you want to use this as a reference later on. Alrighty, so we are going to switch to raidbots.com to get started. So again, if you're following along at home, you should have the Simulation Craft add-on and have Raidbots up. Now, there's a bunch of options here. We're actually not going to do these in order. If you haven't used Raidbots before, it's better to kind of start slow and build yourself up to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. So we're actually going to start out with a quick sim. So if you click that, you have two options here as far as finding information. One, you can find yourself in the armory. It'll pull up all your talents and even give you a chance to change them if you've screwed something up. And then it's going to also show you all the gear that you had on the last time you logged out. Now, this is a great option if you maybe are at work on your lunch break or on your phone doing something and you don't have access to the game and what you logged out in last was perfectly fine. This option here, load from armory, is good for everything. So it's good for everything except the top gear. Top gear or best in bags, you actually need the information from your character because it shows Raidbots what you actually have in your bags. So we'll cover that next. But right now, just for the quick sim, this load for armory is fine. I personally, if I'm parked in front of my computer and I'm not out and about, I do like to grab the latest information from my character. So the way that works is we're going to switch back to World of Warcraft. So here I am again. So nice. Now you should see kind of towards the bottom-ish middle of your screen, I've magnified my command line. So in order to bring up, assuming you already have the Simulation Craft add-on installed and it's ready to go, the command is simc. You hit that and you get this window that pops up. It's pretty neat. It's got all the information about what you've currently got going on with your character, and then at the bottom it's got the gear that's in your bags. Now they're serious when they say from bags. This is not gear from your bank. This is not gear if you're going like old school and you got some stuff in void storage. It's not going to pick up any of that. This is actual gear in bags. So if you've got some legendaries stashed in your bank or whatever, you need to have them with you. Now, I'm ridiculous and I'm a pack rat and I carry a ton of stuff around with me. I don't think most people do that though. So this is your information that you're going to grab from your Simulation Craft add-on. in order to grab it, you're going to do Control C to copy. Then we're going to switch back to Raidbots, and you're just going to Control V and paste it in there. Now, if you notice when you paste that data in, it actually overrides whatever you had gotten from the armory, which is totally fine. So this is kind of just your basic, here's my character, I want to know how much DPS I can do. But before we get there, I want you to look at the simulation options. It's closed right now, but if you open it, it gives you kind of some settings. If you never change anything except one setting in your whole entire life, I would prefer that you change it from weekly to nightly. This will help, this gets you the absolute latest version of your class and spec. If there's anything crazy, some nerfs, some hot fixes that happen, anything like that, it will usually be caught in the nightly and not necessarily the weekly. So if you don't do anything else, please change that to nightly. Couple other things I just want you to be aware of is all the simulations that we're going to do tonight are going to be single target, which is considered patchwork. Now, everything that we're going to do is going to be identical if you're going to do it for AoE. If you guys aren't you haven't been around for a while, Patchwork was a boss in Naxxramas. He had a hard 6-minute enrage. You basically stood there, you DPS'd your tiny little heart out, and really there wasn't anything else going on. So this is like your pure single target guy. There's not a lot of recent comparisons. That's why we're still using Patchwork. The closest that I see lately, at least for as close to single target as you can get, would be like Goroth in Tomb. You still have the pillars to deal with and some stuff like that, but if you dial it down and you maybe do an LFR, it would get you close to what this Patchwork would be like. The other option, I'm not going to go through all these options because honestly it's a little too much, but if you want to do an AoE style, I would recommend the Hectic Ad Cleave. So Horadon, he was that dinosaur in Throne of Thunder. He had all those troll buddies that would run out. This is very similar, I would say, to Scorpion in Nighthold, or even Mistress Shazine in Tomb. She doesn't have a constant onslaught of ads, but they're pretty frequent and you have to move a lot. So again, if you're going to look at AoE, I would try the Hectic Ad Cleave, but everything we're going to do for tonight is going to be the single target. Now, I see this question a lot in the Hunter Discord. How long should my fight length be? Honestly, 5 minutes is all the fights in Tomb right now except Kill Jaden. Kill Jaden is more like a 9-minute fight, but he's got that intermission where he just eats popcorn and watches us die to whatever crap's on the floor. So I don't know if I'd call that a true 9-minute fight. I mean, it's not like you can do anything. So for my personal preference, I just leave it on 5 minutes, and I think that's totally reasonable for 99% of the bosses that we're doing right now. Just for your information, the APL, that is if your particular class and spec has some beef with the rotation or other aspects, the details of what your hunter or your warlock or your priest is specifically doing. Some people will write up modifications. You would stick them there. Beast Mastery doesn't have any, so I can't really help you with that, but this is where being in contact with your class and spec community can be helpful. Now, all the reports, you can actually change the name. So I could call this like QuickSim 1 if I wanted to remember it. If you notice, so I have an account with Raidbots. It's free to have an account. And if you have an account, you can change these report names and then it will save them for you. So you can see how bad I am at changing the names. So I've got a whole bunch of gear compares and I don't know what they are. But if you like to keep track of things, then bounce back and look at them again. This is the best way with the report name. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick run quick sim. Oh no, I don't have relics. Okay. I'm actually happy that this happened because I had that whole computer restart and I had just jumped into the game. Sometimes when you first get into the game, your relics, stop back to World of Warcraft, your relics will actually be blank for a little bit while it's trying to load everything. If that happens, just run your SimC again. Copy it. And then we're going to move back to Raidbots. And I'm going to Control A and delete, and I'm going to repaste it. So now I hopefully have relics. So that's actually pretty cool that that happened. That's really the only glitch that I come across. Now, if you're following along at home, you'll notice that I really didn't have a queue. I pretty much just jumped right in there. And if you're doing this, you may have a queue. The difference is Raidbots does the Patreon just like a lot of other websites do. And I think for like $3 a month, you can jump ahead of the general population queue, which is what I do. I run a lot of Sims. And I'll run Sims. If I get an item on a boss, I'll run a Sim before I get to the next boss to know if I should keep it and use it or I should hand it off to a teammate. That may not be your case. I am not selling Raidbots Patreon subscriptions here. I don't get a kickback if you guys all suddenly sign up. I'm just saying if you find yourself running a lot and it's within your budget to do something like this. For me personally, it's been really good. So what you have is you've got your report. It's going to show up if you have an account. You got your little report guy there. So you can always come back to this page. And you've got this DPS number at the top. Now, again, I lurk in the Hunter Discord, and I see people come in and they say, what's the best in gear? What should I wear this? Should I wear that? And they'll say, go sim yourself. And they'll run off. They'll sim themselves, they'll run back, and they'll say, I got this GPS number, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I can't get that high. Do I just need to get good? What's going on? Honestly, I've never been able to reach the CPS number. First off, we talked about the kind of fight that it's simming, right? You're literally standing there and doing nothing but concentrating on your rotation. I also want to show you a couple of other pieces of information so you have a better understanding of where this number is coming from. So we're using Raidbots, but the back-end engine behind Raidbots is Simulation Craft. It's a standalone program. You can download it for free. The problem with it is the interface is not that great. It's a lot of code and a lot of numbers and stuff like that. Where Raidbots, as you can see, it's pretty graphical. It's very easy to use. But it does generate the same reports that the Simulation Craft program would do. And I actually want to jump in, the reports right here. I want to jump in and I want to show you something. Now, you're going to see a ton of information. There's a lot of math going on here. Unless you're like super into it, you could spend a lot of time looking at all this stuff. But I'm going to assume that you don't care about my particular hunter. And we're going to drop down to this action priority list. I want to show you, okay, so we're in a fight where we never have to move. Our buddy is never going to run crap over top of us. We don't have to do anything. We are going to flask. We're going to use an augment rune. We're going to eat a feast or whatever the best food is for your class and spec. I'm actually going to remember to summon my pet before we pull the boss. And you're going to pre-pot. Okay, so all this stuff is happening in the simulation before you even do your first auto shot. And then later on in the fight, the simulation will intelligently use a second potion. I know for mine, it waits until I got a bunch of buffs kind of lined up and cooldowns ready to go, and then it'll pop that second potion. So that's what this is. And it's kind of neat too. You can come down here to the sample sequence and you can actually see the rotation that the simulation is using. And I like that the boss is named Fluffy Pillow. That's like my favorite thing. But you can actually see like this is what it's doing, and this is the exact order that it's doing it, and in a very mathematically precise manner. It's never missing a cooldown. It's never hitting, fat fingering one button over the other. They never accidentally turtle shell themselves and can't hit anything anymore. So just keep in mind that this number, I treat it as a comparison. Like, this is where I could be. I can't really be there. But if I'm here and I make a change, does it get better or does it get worse? And that's really what I use that number for. I don't stress a lot about the actual number. Now, I do try to do my best, but my best is not going to be standing still and being mathematically perfect. So at that point, I'm going to pause. I'm going to check my Discord, see if there's anything going on in it, because so I don't see any questions in Discord. I need to jump over. You may end up with some weird sounds here, because again, my computer did some crazy stuff. I'm gonna pop the chat out if I can. Some crazy stuff. Yep, here's some weirdo sound stuff. Pop out.
The only thing harder than winning is...
Go away. All right, so I got everything back. I don't see any questions, so I am going to move on. So the next thing that I want to cover is the top gear. So top gear, I call it best in bags. I used to spend a lot of time on the Ask Mr. Robot's website. So again, you're going to notice this is blank. All of your information that you changed initially in the quick sim is going to carry over. So it's kind of nice. You don't have to really worry about it too much, although I do try to do a sanity check every once in a while. So I'm going to paste in my information, and it's going to give me a lot of stuff. So it's going to give me all my current talents at the top. And then it's going to show you the ridiculous amount of gear that I carry around with me. Everything that I'm currently wearing is yellow with a check mark. And before we start getting into all this gear stuff, I actually want to go down to the bottom. This is a really neat feature that I really like about Raidbots. Right here, it's telling you if you run a simulation, these are the legendaries that you're going to have. We're not changing them out. But down here, there's a gem enchant section. What this does is, let's say you just got a piece of gear off of a boss. It's sitting in your bags, and you want to know if it's better or worse. But it has a gem slot. Certainly, you're not going to stick a gem in there before you decide whether it's good or not. If you pick a gem, neck, cloak, ring, enchant, anything down here, it will fill that information in for you. So like, I know up here, I have this ring that has a slot and I have nothing in it. So if I want to sim that ring with a gem in it, you can pick which kind of enchants, gems, whatever you want. Now, what I'm picking right now is for my class and spec. Again, make sure that you're in contact with your community, read some guides, find out, what people think you should be using in these particular slots. For me, mastery, agility, that sort of stuff. Now, there's one caveat. If you look at the gem list, there's no plus 200 gem. So you're kind of on your own for your one super great gem. But honestly, in the big scheme of things, 50 of a secondary stat is not going to make or break your best in bags. Now, at the bottom, there's actually an option for keep or replace. So keep is if you have some crazy stuff going on, which I do. I have some crit on this gem. It will keep the crit on that gem for me, and it will just add in the stuff if I am missing it. If I hit replace, it's going to override the crazy stuff that I'm doing to this ring, and it's going to replace it with this information for all of my gear. So why would you want to do that? If you are running a spec where you may need one secondary stat, or maybe you need the other and you're not sure, do I have enough? If I did all of mastery, is that better than doing all crit? So you can actually run a sim and say, okay, if I did all mastery, where am I? Okay, come back. If I did all crit, where am I? So it's a really neat, easy way to kind of regem and retool all of your gear at once. As far as set bonuses go, I typically handle managing my set bonuses on my own, but if you want to lock everything in to I have to have a 2-piece or I have to have the 4-piece, you are totally welcome to use those. But for me, I'm actually hoping someday I don't need a 2-piece tier 19, so I just leave them on any. 2 legendaries. The only time you would uncheck this is if you don't have 2 legendaries. If you only have 1 or you have none, take this off. Otherwise, it's going to run the limit that you will always have 2 legendaries. So if that all makes sense, we're going to scroll back up here to my ridiculous amounts of gear. 9 times out of 10, I am using Raidbots because I got a piece of gear that I wasn't quite expecting from a raid. Maybe it Titan Forged, and I don't know. Is it good? Is it not good? So let's say I had an awesome night and I picked up 2 pieces of gear. Let's say I got some 930 bracers, and where is it? That I got a cool 940 ring. So I'm guessing based on eye level that they're probably better, but it's hard to say. So that's why we're here. Now, if you notice down here, 6 gear sets. What Raidbots is going to do is it's going to run 6 simulations for every option. So it's like, okay, I put on just the wrist. Okay, now I just put the ring on with this guy. Oh, now I just put the ring on with this guy. Then I did all of that when I also did the bracers. So you can see how when you're doing every iteration, every version that you can come up with the gear, these gear sets basically go up exponentially. They can really climb. Now, I do know for the basic free account, you're looking at like somewhere around a maximum of like 36 gear sets. I have gone up with my little $3 account. I've been able to go up to 54 gear sets, I believe, is the highest. If this green text turns red, that means you've exceeded your allotment of gear sets and you need to maybe set the bar a little lower for all the questions that you're trying to answer at once. So again, a reality check, it's saying, look, these are the legendaries that we're sticking with. And you say, awesome, thank you. And we're going to come down here and we're going to find top gear. So we're going to do some processing. I like that I can do a little reality check, make sure I didn't actually screw it up and end up in the AoE, which has happened before. So it's generated my report, and what it's telling me is it's saying, yes, your top gear is wearing those bracers, and it is wearing this ring with that ring. So it wants me to swap out my butterfly ring for the braided silver ring, and it wants me to put on the new bracers. Now, if you come down here, it gives you the actual DPS numbers that you would have, projected for each iteration, each version. So I've got this ring with that ring, this ring, that ring, the bracers, just the bracer. This is where I was before, just wearing the bracers and not wearing anything else. So this actually was my baseline. So if I click that, the show relative difference will base everything off of that. So if I switch to the gear they're recommending, it's going to be a 0.5% increase on my DPS. Now, honestly, I usually don't show the relative difference. I actually look at the real, the DPS calculated numbers. My personal rule of thumb, because there's actually variation every time you run the simulation, you're going to get slightly different numbers. My general rule of thumb is if it's within 2 to 3,000 DPS, it's really the same. I am not good enough in the game to see a difference there. Okay. Mathematically, there's a difference, but when you start throwing boss mechanics and teammate predictability in there, I'm not going to see a difference. So I would actually say that the difference between the Top Gear, this ring configuration, and just wearing what I had, I'm going to say there's really no difference. Like, I'm not going to see a real difference in the meters and in the logs. Now, I think I would see a difference with just my thistle-proof thorn grabbers. And there's definitely a difference if I swap out my purple gem ring and keep the butterfly ring. Like that's a legit difference. So I really don't want to do that. So if you end up running a Top Gear simulation and you have 3 options with rings and bracers, you're not really going to see it. But if you're doing this with trinkets or anything else that's got a proc or an on use or anything like that, it actually comes down to personal preference. I know a few weeks ago I ran a simulation where I ran 2 different talent options and they were basically the same. So I picked the one for the rotation that I enjoy doing. So you do still have a little bit of leeway. You do not have to pick the mathematically perfect one because really you're not going to see a difference in the game. So that's what I had for my first version of Top Gear. Now I want to do something a little bit more complex. So I did try out the ring and the gloves. It thinks that I should be wearing those. I mentioned before that I am still wearing 2 pieces of tier 19. I've got a cloak and I've got some gloves. At some point, I am hopeful that I will be able to drop those. And so what we're going to do is say, okay, have we hit that point? I got this new cloak the other night. It's a 910. The stats aren't super great. Versatility is not great for me. So maybe this one is a good way to go. I have some really nice bracers with really good gloves with really good stats. So if I'm not going to wear this, I'm probably going to wear that. So those are the kind of questions that you ask yourself and then you answer them with the simulation. So I'm going to say, okay, is it time? Can I just wear the better gear that I've already gotten and ditch this tier 19 2-piece set bonus? So again, reality check. I'm wearing these legendaries. We're going to find Top Gear. So we're processing. The more gear sets that you have, the longer it'll take to process through them. And what it's telling me is there definitely is a big difference. I can't just throw on a cloak and gloves that I picked up. I'm going to get hit with a pretty decent. So if I do that, I'm looking at almost a 3% decrease in my DPS. So I will be trudging along with this cloak and these crappy gloves for at least another little while until I can get something better. But that's another question that I think comes up a lot, at least what I see in the hunter community is, I still have these old things, when can I get rid of them? And this will tell you, you've reached it or you haven't. So I've got one more. So back to Top Gear. Wait for it to bump. People want to know, what legendaries they should be wearing. Now, this is assuming that you have these legendaries in your bags and you're choosing between the legendaries that you have. But I see it a lot. You know, the lists that you come across out there for best legendaries, it's more of like a general ranking, and a lot of times it depends on the gear that you would replace the legendary with, not necessarily the legendaries that you're currently wearing. So let's say right now I'm wearing Pride and I'm wearing the belt. Now, just from personal experience, I know that this belt is not going anywhere. But, I mean, I wore Pride like, 6 months ago or something. Is it time? Is it time for Pride to move on? Does the bubble go? So, if I'm not going to wear Pride I'm going to wear this pendant. But if I'm not wearing Pride what would my other legendary possibilities be? Well, maybe I'll wear the wrist. It might be good. I know, again, from being in contact with my class and spec, that if you're wearing the wrists, you probably want to wear this trinket. Also, there's a new ring that came out with the last patch that might be good. So let's try that guy out. And let's see. So I'm already up to 12 gear sets. If I bump it up one more and I say, oh, look, I have some shiny boots. So it's not going to go up as exponentially when you're looking at just legendaries, because you have to have 2 of them. You can't do every single mathematical version. You have to have 2, which means they have to be paired up. Now, as a reality check, again, it's saying, look, you're going to be wearing this belt. So, and let me show you what happened. I actually did this to myself the other night. Is I made all these cool changes, but I forgot to pick an option for Pride which I currently have on. And look, it's like, oh, you've made a lot of cool changes, but we're not going to do any of them because you haven't given us an option for Pride and we cannot read your mind. So I just use it as a quick reality check that I haven't messed anything up. Make sure that you have something selected instead of Pride or it won't let you take it off. So let's come down here. Let's find top gear. So I'm in a queue right now of not very many people, so that's good. And I checked with the Raidbots website. They said rarely, very, very rarely does the queue be more, is more than 1 or 2 minutes. And it, as far as they could tell, it's never gone over 5 minutes. So, and there are some nights that are busier than others. So we'll go ahead and finish processing. And unfortunately, it's saying, you're gonna get like a 5,000 DPS decrease if you change out your trinkets, which I'm not crazy about doing. But if I want to use the ring, I'm gonna take a hit. Now, this is a simulation, so it is simulating procs. It's simulating on uses, all that kind of stuff. This one, this is the extra talent one that everybody got. So it's factoring that in. Now, one thing it is factoring in, though, to be honest, with the extra talent one, is I currently don't have Bestial Fury. Like if you see under Beastmaster, Bestial Fury, I'm not using Bestial Fury. But if I was, it's not going to pick my talent for me that would be different than Bestial Fury. So you have to be aware that if you are simming your legendary that gives you the extra talent, you need to not be currently using that talent. It's not gonna give you good results. I'm using a different talent, so that one is fine. But you may have to run a separate, you could still do the quick sim, but change your talents and try running it that way, or change them in game. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for the bonus talent legendary. So it's saying, okay, well, this is nice and all, but you have to keep the bubble. So I will keep the bubble. And that is all I had for the Top Gear Best in Bags. So I'm going to do a quick check of Twitter. Or I like to call it Twitter, but it's actually Twitch. Okay, so one person asked, is the results screen showing us what we should use or just what we have? So it's showing you, let's see if I can go back to the Top Gear I just did. So it's showing you everything. It says if you want the top DPS, this is what you should be wearing. It's up to you to know what you're currently wearing. So you have to kind of filter through. I know that this is what I'm wearing right now, so I know that I'm wearing the Top Gear. But if I was wearing Convergence instead, I would know that I would need to change it out for the foci. I would need to be wearing a different trinket. So it's going to show you all of it. Everything, what you have, what you could wear, all of your options. All right, so I'm just going to scroll through it now. Again, if you feel like I didn't answer your question, please contact me and send me your question. I would be happy to answer it one-on-one. So if I have a legendary that I did not upgrade to 970 or crafts a year that has not been upgraded to 900, it does not know that, right? It actually knows what you have in your bags, and when we go to the next section, you will be able to put in the option of, I don't have it in my bags, but if I did upgrade it, you can try it out after it's upgraded. So actually, we're going to answer your question in the next segment. All right, so I checked that. I'm going to check Discord real quick. Nobody's in Discord. So, all right, we're going to move on to Gear Compare, or as I like to call it, try it before you buy it. This is where you can build up your best in slot for your personal gear based on what you already have and what you are looking to get from a raid or from Mythic Plus or from a 5-man or even from World Quest. No matter what level that you're playing in the game, you can look and see, okay, if I got this, would it be an upgrade? This is what I actually use to generate my best in slot. Now, one thing, this is the other little nuance of Raidbots, is it's supposed to be showing me my gear right here, and it's not. I know that this is right because it copied it over from what I put in Top Gear. So I'm just going to hit enter and kind of bounce around a little bit, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll update it. So if you hop in here and you don't have any gear to look at, it's because it hasn't updated it from up there. So this is the gear that I'm wearing. And it totally depends on how you're playing the game, where you would look to find upgrades. If you are into Mythic Plus, or you're doing 5-mans, or you're doing World Quests, you're probably going to use Wowhead to filter your gear. If you're pretty much just doing the latest raid, or maybe 1 or 2 raids back, I actually like to use the in-game gear. You know, it shows you, okay, if you're in Tomb, here's all your options, you know, stuff like that. So just to show you really quickly, not that everybody is raiding or anything like that, but if I'm in here and I go to the adventure guide, again, the problem with dungeons is it has everything individual. So Wowhead is a much better option. And then just to show you super fast, under loot, you can actually see all the legendaries that are available for your class. Like, I don't have this one, but it's kind of neat to see what's out there for Beast Mastery or whatever your spec is. Now, if you go to Raids, Tomb of Sargeras, and come over to the Loot tab, It's going to give you every piece of loot that drops into. Now, I have access to heroic. You may have raid finder. Everybody should have raid finder now. Normal, mythic, whatever you have access to. I would say heroic for me. One thing that I actually need is I need a new trinket. I'm still running an old trinket. And so these are my trinket options. I have the owl trinket already. But I think I want to get the engine of eradication. I haven't been able to, but I think that's what I want off of Maiden. So to bounce back to Raidbots. So everybody in your mind should also want an engine of eradication. Who doesn't like chasing down orbs? I don't have it. It's not in my bags, but should I have it? So if I type in engine of eradication, I have access to the heroic version, which is the 915. I'm not going to worry about gems. I'm just going to go with the baseline version. Now, when it comes to doing a try it before you buy it with trinkets and rings, you have to select which one you're going to replace. So in this version, it's replacing my owl trinket and I'm keeping the foci. What I want to do is I don't know if I should be replacing the owl or the foci. So I'm going to make, did you hear? See, I hit duplicate gear set. It just duplicates what I have. Same everything, but I'm going to move this to trinket slot 2. So I'm going to say, okay, if I got an engine, do I ditch the owl? Do I ditch the foci? Let's find out. So again, all this stuff will stay the same. We're going to bounce down here and hit compare items. Now, when you're doing a gear compare, or again, the try it before you buy it, you are generating the versions that you're running. It is not like the best in bags where you pick a couple of pieces of gear and it runs every version it can come up with. You have to come up with those versions. So that's why I had to run 2 gear sets for the engine. So what it's telling me here is if I get an engine, and a 915 would be perfectly acceptable, I want to ditch the foci. So I keep the owl, ditch the foci. If I get confused and I put it in the wrong slot, I am going to take a hit for it. So I'm going to see a real DPS loss in the game if I can't figure out where to stick my shiny new engine trinket. Now, a cool thing, and you're going to actually see this when we do talent compare and relic compare, is when you're typing in names of things. When you generate the report, you get a use as template button. What this means is you can just hop right back. See, it gave us a little glitch again. We're going to just bounce around. It's giving you back everything that you just did. So I know just now from running my sim that this gear set where I throw my owl in the trash is not what I would do. So I'm actually going to remove this gear set. And that leaves me with this guy. So I know this version I simmed higher. Okay. So now I want to say if I had this engine now, and I know some of you, I'm not a big fan of running old dungeons, but there are people out there that are running old raids rather, trying to get a higher level. My foci is an awesome 895. It does have a gem slot in it. Let's say you just really love, where's this from? The Nighthold. You just really love the Nighthold. And you're like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get an engine of eradication ever. My raid leader doesn't like me. I have terrible RNG. I'm better off running back and trying to get a Titan Forged, War Forged foci. So you can totally do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a gear set. We're going to keep our engine just as comparison. And you're going to say foci. Any part of the word works as long as you spell it correctly. All right, so let's say if I had a foci, let's say I got lucky and I got a 915, okay? Maybe that's good enough, Maybe it's not. I'm not really sure. So I'm going to try out a 920, duplicate, and I'm going to try out a 9. We'll just shoot for the moon. We'll say a 930, which is fairly ridiculous. All right, so what I'm going to say is, okay, how good of a foci do I need to beat out a 915 engine of eradication? Different classes, different specs do different things. Foci is not is not actually a real popular choice with Beastmaster Hunters. A lot of times they're going to run this sim with the trinket off of Ursoc because it is still ridiculously good. So I've actually run those sims and said, okay, how much pain and agony do I have to go through to get something better? And sure enough, even if I got a 915, which is dreaming, it would be equivalent, essentially. So 2,000 DPS is not particularly noticeable. 6,000, that's kind of a legit. Sure, I'll take 13,000 DPS increase. Sure. So if you've decided, you're like, hey, my buddies are getting together and we're going to go back and we're going to run Nighthold, and one of these drops, that if it drops a 920, you better roll on it for that increase. Definitely if it Titan forges up to a 930. And you could run iterations and find out, okay, where's 925 put me? That sort of thing. And what this does is this lets you plan. It says, I have this gear, and this lets you plan ahead so you're not scrambling at the last second if something drops. So I'm going to go back, use this template. I am going to do something a little bit fancy. I'm going to get rid of all my foci here. So let's say I got an engine of eradication. I'm going to bump this guy again. You can do it. Yay. So I am, like I said, like I was whining and complaining earlier, I'm still running the tier 19, the cloak and the gloves. I want to know, so right now, the only tier 20 I have is the hat, the shoulders, the chest, and the legs. So that's my 4-piece. I do have a legendary that's supposed to be really good for my chest, but I'm stuck because I have that as a tier piece. If I could get the cloak, if I could get the tier 20 cloak, I could wear that other legendary, and I have some 920 gloves that I could put on. So is that going to be better? So let's see if you could follow along, and we're just going to pretend like I kept the engine of eradication. I'm just getting all kinds of gear this time. So in order for me to make the switch, I need 4 pieces of the tier 20. So I need the wild stalker cape. I'm not just a regular stalker, I'm a wild stalker. That's right. I am just going to go baseline 915. I would enchant it though. So that gives me a 5-piece. So if you see, it's updated it here. Now I have a 5-piece. What I'm going to do is take away the chest. I'm going to wear my legendary chest, which is Parcel's Tongue, because I'm part of Slytherin. Go Snakes. And so I've got those guys going. Unfortunately, man, I've got more than 2 legendaries. And I've actually seen people run and like, look how great, my DPS is. And it's because they're actually wearing 3 legendaries. It's pretty neat. I got to get rid of Pride As. So if you remember, I had that crappy Zolus Timestone pendant. The one that I have is a 905. No socket. I do enchant it with claw. So where am I now? And I have one more thing. I have pretty good gloves. I'm not going to wear these 890 gloves all on their own with no other benefit. So I have, see if I can spell it right, gauntlets of spite. Nope. Spiteful haunting. And the ones that I have are a 920. So I've completely moved all my gear around because I don't have this cloak and I don't have this trinket. this lets you say, okay, is it worth trying to beat out all the other hunters and the warriors and everybody else on my token for this cloak, or should I just pass on it and let other people, work on it first and save my, RNG juju for something else? So let's come down here and let's hit compare items. And you can do this with really any item in the game. I sat down actually with the list of trinkets and went through and simmed each one as if I had gotten it to see, okay, people think I should get the engine. Should I be getting it? Or is there really a better one for my gear? Now, I would call this borderline. This is a borderline upgrade. And I can tell you from running a bunch of sims on myself that what's holding me back is this craptastic neck that I have. I've run sims, so I saw this and I'm like, this really should be better. I've gone back and, if you come back here and use as a template and you say, okay, let's say I didn't have the world's worst neck. Let's say I had something better and I put it in here and I rerun it. I would actually get a DPS increase. So let's see if I have, like the one that I would probably get is Locket of Splintered Souls. Let's see if I got a 915 and I enchanted it. This starts guiding you towards what really would be your best in slot, best in bags, the whole nine. So absolutely, I have to get another neck. That neck that I have, if I'm not wearing Pradas, is just crap. So these are the kind of questions that you're using the simulations to answer. And so if I see that neck drop, even if it's just a 915, I really need to try hard to get my little grubby hands on it. And in order to do this whole switcheroo, I need the cloak as well. So what this does is I write this stuff down. I keep it next to my computer. When I'm on those bosses that drop these things, I know that's where I should bonus roll. It makes everything more efficient, less guessing, less, oh man, maybe I need that, maybe I don't, trying to rifle through all the gear that boss drops in the heat of the moment. So I use this a lot as my best in slot building tool, as you will. So that's what I had for gear compare. I hope it wasn't too confusing. I'm going to check. I think everybody's on the Twitter. I like to call it Twitter, but it's not. It's Twitch. I'm going to check really quickly. Let's see. Baghira, I'm not actually sure who that is, but it says take out your 200 Agility gem and replace it with a haste gem. I'm going to assume that you're a Beastmaster Hunter. Again, I mentioned being in contact with your spec and class communities. There's a little bit of a weirdness that happens with Beastmaster Hunters around haste. You can look it up. There's a pinned, if you go into the Beastmaster Hunter Discord, there's a pinned message that explains all of it, but it's a mathematical glitch. Oh, you're a shaman. I would check, because I know for ours, there's this pretend haste cap that you need to shoot for Beastmaster that's not real. I don't know anything about shaman, so I cannot help you. My highest level shaman, I think, is level 16, so I'm not going to be a good resource there. But I would check your class Discord or wherever you would go for reliable information and see where it's coming. I can explain it to you and I can bore you to tears about where ours comes from, but it's not something that mathematically perfect. It's real, but it wouldn't translate into the game because of, again, mechanics, buddies running you over with crap, fat fingering turtle, accidentally, disengaging yourself when you're trying to do something. I would just check into it. If something doesn't meet your reality check, look into it, because that's absolutely true for Beastmaster hunters. So I hope I answered, or sort of answered, your question in an offhand sort of way. The next part that we're going to hit is relic compare. So this is the only part of Raidbots that I'm a little bit like, it could be just a little bit better. It knows what relics you have. In all of this gibberish right here, it's telling it these are the relics that you have. I'd have to look it up and figure out what all of that is, but it's there. It doesn't actually show you. And I wish, like Gear Compare and Top Gear, I wish it would show you what you currently have on. That would be so nice, and it would show you what slots you have. So typically what I have to do is I have to bounce back to World of Warcraft. I gotta grab my guy and I gotta say, okay, look, I have Storm. That's my number one, because it's left to right is top to bottom. So that's also not super user friendly. So this is 1, 2, and 3. So mine is Storm, Arcane, Iron. So whatever yours is, I usually write it down because I do have the world's worst memory. We're gonna switch back to Raidbots. So again, this is Storm for me, Arcane for me, and Iron for me. It will totally let you put in whatever gem you want. I could throw a fell relic in there and be like, yay, this is great. Your DPS is going to take a hit, but yay, it's great. It's not going to stop you from doing crazy stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I picked up a new gem, or a new relic. I like pretend that they're gems. It's called Unfurling Origination. I actually got a nice one. It was a 915. Now this is item level. This is not additional levels to your weapon. So just make sure you want, 900, 895, 915, those sorts of numbers in here. Again, just like the gear compare, if you want to do, your gear sets, you have to create them. So what I'm going to say is I also picked up an arcane relic called Charred Hymnal of the Moon, and it was also a 915. I don't know which one of these is good. So by putting them together, if there's some sort of synergy there, great. But I actually need to find out, like, on their own. And again, I feel like this particular page doesn't have as much love as the others. There's no duplicate gear set and that sort of stuff. So we're going to go on, and again, Relic 2, Charred Hymnal. So I've created my 3 gear sets. I've got 2 items, and these are all the versions that I could do. If you change your mind about one, you can get rid of them over here. And I'm going to hit Compare Relics. So again, if you get that bug where you copy over your information and your relic slots are empty, just hop back and give the game a second. So if I use the Charred Hymnal of the Moon, I'm gonna get not really a change. Long story short, for single target, this is not going to be an actual DPS upgrade. Now, if I stick both of them in there, I'm looking at a real DPS decrease. And apparently the Unfurling Origination is the one that's just killing me. So whatever the secondary ability is, that extra point that you get for that one, it is not good for me. So if I wanted to make a change, I could slap in the Charred Hymnal of the Moon, or I could leave it the same, and I probably wouldn't see a difference. And just like we did with the gear compare, there is a use as template, so you can go back, Or you can grab, it'll grab what you have from the armory as well. You can go back and change stuff around, or say, okay, how high of a level of unfurling origination do I need for it to be good? So I could change that to like a 930. Like, is that good enough? And a lot of times, again, if you're in there reading information that people provide about your class and your spec, a lot of times people will come up with tables that'll say, okay, you need like a 3-item upgrade. It has to be 3 items higher or more for it to be better. And this is where you can actually look that up. And as you can tell, even a 930 is not going to help me. So anytime an unfurling origination drops, I probably don't want that. And you can go through and run as many versions of this as you like. Again, not a big increase, probably not a real increase actually out in the game. So that's what I had. There's not a whole lot to the relics. I mean, it's pretty straight up. The hardest part is remembering which slot is yours. I think they could fix that up a little bit better. So I'm going to hit up the Twitter. Okay, so some conversation happening. As far as the 10,000 iterations and that sort of stuff, I generally just leave that stuff alone. There are articles out there that could explain better when you need to change it and when you don't. But typically, I haven't had any problems. And again, I'm using the information as comparison. So as long as I keep all of my iterations the same, it should be a decent comparison. I mean, if you think about like sitting in front of a combat dummy for 5 minutes, rolling through your rotation and that sort of stuff. And again, that's also where my rule of thumb, like 2,000 to 3,000 DPS, is really not different, because I'm not running some ridiculous high number of iterations to try to really get this precise number, because I can never actually reach that number. So it's not that important to me. All right, so talent compare. So again, this could be a little bit better, Raidbots. It knows what your talents are. Your talent, stop. Your talents are right here. It gives you this awesome code. What the code means is, for the first row of talents, it's 1, 2, 3. And then it's just numbers on down. So for my particular spec that I'm running right now, it's 2, a whole bunch of 1s, and then 2. And so it actually looks like this. So 2, a whole bunch of 1s, and 2. And it'll give you the code right here for you. Now, when you want to come in and look at your talents, please keep in mind that you are comparing your talents for one fight style. So if you're doing single target down here, you're probably going to want to be doing single target up here. The only scenario that I can come up with where you would want to test out an AoE spec on single target or a single target spec on AoE is if your plan was to not change your spec no matter what boss you were in a raid. So you're going to use the same spec for sisters that you would use for Harjaton, for example. If that's your plan, this would be a good place to come and find out, is that like a realistic plan, or should maybe you be fine-tuning your AoE spec versus your single target spec. But anyway, so this here is the current spec that I am running. Beastmaster Hunter is in a weird place right now. We actually have 3 viable specs, depending on your gear and some other factors, for single target. So another viable single target spec is this guy. So you can see up here the numbers have changed. I'm actually going to change the name because the numbers get kind of wonky. So I'm going to call this Dire Frenzy Bestial Fury. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the third one is basically the same thing, but depending on what you're wearing, it could be aspect of the beast, which is this guy back down here. He's a little bit weird. So the one that I have on, plus this one, these are all considered viable single target specs. So if you hit compare talents, it's going to run just like essentially like running 3 gear sets, and it's going to say, okay, for the gear that I'm currently wearing, this is the spec that I should be running. If I want to take probably a real hit on my DPS, I could switch to the Dire Frenzy. And if I just want to throw my DPS in the trash, I am welcome to take Aspect of the Beast. I must have skipped. Oh, the Blinding Shot is not a DPS talent. It's a stun. So I must have left that guy out when I was running him, and Post Haste as well. So again, those aren't actual DPS talents. They're not going to affect my final numbers. I've kind of harped on it a lot. Again, if you are cognizant of what people are talking about in your class and spec community, a lot of times you'll know why these talents are good. This talent section is going to come out higher for me because I'm still wearing the 2-piece tier 19 and my crit is really high. So as long as I'm doing those two things, this is my talent choice. If I go back and I get that cloak and I get the engine and I find somebody to give me a necklace that's not total crap, once I get that stuff on and my tier 19 is gone, I need to come back and run a talent sim and find out, because I can almost guarantee that I will need to switch to this one with the Dire Frenzy. Because that's what I see people talking about in my community. So I am on the lookout for, if I ever get to that point with my gear, I do need to come back and check for myself that, the talent thing needs to change, or maybe it doesn't. And that's one thing to kind of keep in mind as well. Your gear and your talents are not this completely separate and these two entities that have no interaction. They're very much dependent on one another. If you start throwing in the legendary that gives you the extra talent, the extra, then you need to make sure that when you're running everything that you aren't double dipping on that talent, because then you're not going to get real numbers. So you really kind of have to look at the big picture. As long as you know that you're probably not going to change your talents and that sort of thing, you could run as many iterations on your gear as you want, but just be aware of what could happen if you make some major changes. So I'm going to bounce. That's all I had for talents. I mean, you can play with all of it all day and kind of do whatever you like with it. Yeah, I totally forgot those, but they don't matter anyway. You can try out all kinds of stuff. I came in here when we were working on, who was it? We were working on somebody that my AoE was really crappy. And I came in here and I ran a bunch of AoE talent simulations until I could get to the one that gave me my best chance at doing better DPS. Still not great, but at least better. So that's what I had for talents. Let's hop back here, see if anybody's saying anything. Nope. So the last thing that I had that I wanted to talk about was stat weights. Again, this is going to look almost identical to the quick sim that we did at the very beginning. there, you don't get to change anything. You got to change it kind of ahead of time. And then you come in here for stat weights. I'm going to hit generate stat weights. Now, I did mention when we were doing the questions earlier about that glitch that Beastmaster Hunters have with haste. It's going to show up in my stat weights. So it's going to say, oh, look, your crit and your haste are about the same, which isn't exactly real. Then there's mastery. Please don't ever get any versatility if you can help it. And here's your agility. So what this does is it says, okay, for these talents, for the gear that you're wearing, your current stats, for every, like it says here, for every 1 point of something you get, this is how much your DPS will increase. So if you hit copy to clipboard, if you have decided and you're following along at home and you are running the pawn add-on, which is totally optional, if you hit copy to clipboard, and then we're going to switch back to the World of Warcraft. If you just type in /pawn, it comes up. Go to the scale page. If you've never used pawn before, it probably looks like this. It comes preloaded with a bunch, like pretty much every class and spec strings. To enter your own, go to manual and go to import. And you're basically going to do a control V. I like to hit the home button. Everything between these quotes is the name that it's going to have over here. So I already have one that's Raidbots. I already have some that I pulled, like for hunters, the Icy Veins is our best guide. That's not true for everybody, but for us it is. So I've already pulled some off of Icy Veins and put them in as well, so I can kind of keep an eye on the best recommended general ones. So I'm going to change this to temp just so we can kind of keep track of it. And you hit OK. Now, if you come in and you like seriously disagree and you just want to make up your own, you can click on these and you can kind of change them to whatever you like. If you ever don't want one, if you come back here to the scale, this is where you would delete it. If you want it to show up as some sort of fancy color in your bags, you can also change it over here. That's all I'm going to tell you about pawn. This is not a tutorial on pawn, and I'm no expert, but those are the two things that I've needed to use: change color and delete. So what does pawn do for you? Well, if we come and look at my ridiculous bags, it's 6 arrows on anything it considers an upgrade. Now this is again, because I have all the specs in there, is saying, hey, if you wear this, it's a survival upgrade. Not super useful because I don't play survival, but it's there. I got this cool hat. So everybody thinks that that's an upgrade, except marksman. So sweet, let's stick the hat on. Not so fast. My hat slot, my head slot, is actually one of my 4-piece tier. Pawn is not going to tell you anything about tier set bonuses, procs. It is 100% pure stats. So you do have to use a little bit of common sense. Like if you're dealing with something like this ring, all it has is stats. It doesn't have anything else. There's no tier slot. So sure, go for it. You can use this as a rule of thumb. I typically never just stick something on based on what pawn is telling me. I pretty much always do at least a quick best in bags to be sure. Like down here, again, pawn is telling you relative item level. It's not telling you anything about whether the extra point that you would be getting on your weapon, like in this case Wilderness Expert, it's not telling you if that's good at all. All it's saying is if I stick this in my weapon, it's 1 item level better than what I have now. That's it. So don't go too hog wild with pawn. It's like a nice little rule of thumb, but it can definitely lead you astray, and you can end up with some crazy stuff if you just follow it blindly. And So we're gonna hop back to Raidbots. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover as far as simming yourself goes. I'm gonna check the Twitter real quick to see if anything has changed. Nothing has changed. That's really what I wanted to cover. That's the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. There is one other smallish, advanced thing that I could show you if there is interest. If people are like, hey, we've been at this for an hour and 18 minutes, I'm done. My brain is done. That is totally fine. But there is one other thing I can show you, and that is, let's say you want to let Top Gear run all of your iterations, but you want to do it with gear you don't have. So one thing I could show you is how to come up here and add in gear that you don't have. So rather than using the gear compare and running all of your iterations, you can let Top Gear pretend that it's in your bags and run all the iterations for you. If there is interest in that, you need to tell me in the Twitch channel. Otherwise, I'm going to call it good here and maybe save that for something else. So if you want me to cover that, tell me. If not, we're going to call it there. Okay, so we have one person. That's all I needed. So I'm going to give you one thing real quick, actually. So if anybody is done and heading out, I do have one thing. I'm going to copy and paste this just so you know. Oops. Let me grab it from. So let me paste this in. All right. So that's just my copy and paste blurb. If you give me feedback and you feel comfortable giving me your email, I will send you a bunch of stuff, essentially, including the stuff that I'm about to talk about, which is the gem and enchant tables. So there you go. All right. So we are in Raidbots. I hope. Yes, we are in Raidbots. So we're gonna pretend, I need a new neck. We've kind of narrowed that down. This is totally not embarrassing at all. Just dig through all my stuff. So as an example, I'm gonna show you how to add in the Locket of Splintered Souls. So the first thing that you're gonna want to do is we're actually gonna go to Wowhead. So you do need to know, obviously, ahead of time what gear you want to add in. I'm going to put in Locket of Splinter. So I'm going to run and find the Locket of Splintered Souls. Now, whatever Wowhead comes up with first is its baseline item level. Okay, so if this is something you're getting out of a 5-man, like base item level of Mythic Plus is an 865. That may or may not be good for you. Since I have access to the heroic version, I'm going to say I'm going to get a 915. Now, if you want to pretend that you have some sort of crazy luck, you're welcome to pick something over here. But I'm going to say, look, chances are, if I get one, it's going to be a 915. It's important for you to make the change here because in order to enter the information that we need into Raidbots, up at the top, we actually need this information. We need this item number, and this information actually tells Raidbots this is the baseline, but we have a 915. And this I'll cover a little bit in a second. I'm going to hit Control C, and I have a, let's see, Google Docs. sheets. And I will send you a link. If you give me your email address, I will send you a link to this table. But long story short, the nomenclature for entering stuff is you tell it what slot it goes in, which would be these slots over here. You get the ID number from Wowhead. If you're going to do any sort of enchanting or gemming, that's what these tables over here are for. So I have all of the gem IDs, enchant IDs, everybody's all over here if you want to mess with any of that. And then the bonus ID is that other number that we're going to get from Wowhead. So for right now, I'm going to just copy this. And I'm going to come back to Raidbots. I'm going to do a little hash. And I'm going to paste it in. Now, what you're going to see is that particular thing is another Wild Stalker Spalders 915 because that's what I was working on at the time. So I'm going to change this to neck. Again, you can totally pick it from the list. If I come back here, the item number is this. So I'm going to change the item number. As far as neck enchants go, let's see, cloak, neck. I'm going to do claw. So this is going to be my number. Copy. That's going to be my number for claw. I'm not going to worry about gems. So I'm going to just take that out. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to grab the bonus. These, however long a string of numbers is there. And so if you notice, my numbers have a colon between them and you need a / for it to work properly. So I should have a locket of splintered souls. Eye level 915. Look at that. Now, if you look up here, they give the name and they give the item number. You don't need any of that. It's just going to read whatever you slapped in here. So if you want, and if I look, it's even enchanted with Mark of the Claw. It's a 915. Yay! So the sky is the limit. If you really want to know, like you're like, okay, this gives me a DPS increase. And you do all this piecemeal stuff in Gear Compare, and you want to make sure that the overall picture is correct. You can come in here and add whatever gear that you want and compare it to the gear that you're currently wearing and see, really is the whole thing a best in slot. Now, if I come back here, I did include this information. So the ID is your base item number. The bonus ID, the reason you want to set it all up in Wowhead before you copy it is because there's a bunch of code in here that has to do with, does it scale with level? Do you have an heirloom piece on? Quality, bonus stats, eye level adjustment, set quality. It's all in there, and it could be long or it could be short. Like, this locket, the base level is 900. It's not going to scale with whatever level you are. So if you would like a link to this, go ahead when we're all done and fill out the survey. And give me your email address, which I will use for absolutely nothing else, and delete when I'm done. And I'd be happy to send you a link if you think any of that would be useful. So I'm going to bounce back to Twitch and see. Yeah, Fozzik. Fozzik does not give me gear. You know this, Lisa. You know this. Yeah. We don't even have the same stats. Like, he sees my gear and he makes a yucky face. Because I guess all he loves is versatility, which is the worst for me. But if you guys don't have any more questions, I mean, it's pretty simple just to find your stuff on Wowhead. Make sure that you set it up to be exactly what you're looking for here. Copy the numbers over and you're basically good to go. And again, like I just posted up here, that's pretty much what I had. So if you are kind enough to fill out the survey and give me your email address, I'll be happy to send you a link when I upload this to YouTube. I'm going to put together a quick start sim guide, which will be just like a quick shorthand, a quick refresher, so you don't have to dig through an hour presentation unless you just really want to. And I'll give you a link to that gem and enchant code table, because trying to look them all up in Wowhead is a huge pain. So that's pretty much all I had. If anybody has any other questions or anything else, feel free to let me know and I'll try to answer them the best I can. All right, guys. Well, that's nice of you. I do sim a lot. Me and the simulator, we're best friends. It's yeah, I probably spend too much time doing it, but it's fun, and I want to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because the Warforge and the Titan Forge are really just a nightmare trying to figure it out. But so I hope you guys have a great evening, and again, if you have any questions or things aren't working and it's just not what you remember, find me. Find me on Twitter, Discord. Give me your email and you'll have my email. In game, whatever you want, I am totally available. All right, guys. Well, have a great evening.